Dear Connor Murphy, you're known for your meteoric rise to fitness influencer stardom, followed by your tragic downfall into clinical insanity. And it's time to expose the darkest inner workings of a mind that was, and still is, in psychosis.
He was going insane.
Connor Murphy having a mental breakdown.
It was over. He was saying
Goodbye. I never explicitly proclaimed I intended to delete myself, but the implication was evident. May 9th, 2020. My 2 million subscribers were shocked when, instead of posting my ordinary content depicting shirtless shenanigans with women, I published a video titled Goodbye, where I appeared to be uncharacteristically distraught. I expressed discontentment with my family.
he's talking about mental health, the struggles that he had with his parents.
And disclosed that I desired to meet God after a brief period of discomfort in my bathtub.
You can be at peace here in the bathtub. You just have to go through a little pain beforehand.
I concluded the video by doxing myself,
10 Ventura Boulevard.
revealing my address and leaving my door wide open so anyone who wished could come and witness the aftermath.
You can witness what it's like to actually meet God.
The majority of my audience believed that this Los Angeles apartment bathroom had just transformed into a tragic scene from 13 Reasons Why, and that I was the next Hannah Baker. After all, I did thank Netflix for my inspiration.
Thank you, Netflix, for teaching me it's possible.
But was this akin to a theatrical performance you'd see on TV? It couldn't be. After all, social media is equivalent to real life, isn't it? Well, the first contradiction you'll probably notice is that I'm alive, unless this is a deepfake produced by artificial intelligence, which many of you think is the case every time I create a new social media account. So, did I botch my self-deletion attempt? Not exactly. Afterwards, I immediately grabbed my pre-packaged belongings and fled to Venice Beach and vlogged the day I said goodbye. After all, I had just doxed myself. I couldn't safely return to my apartment. But that was okay, since my lease was ending, and I had already booked a flight for Austin, Texas, the next set of a complex, hyper-creative, grandiose YouTube play that only a mind deep in psychosis could dream up. That's right, when I said I was acting at the beginning and at the end of that video, I meant it.
This is just acting, okay?
Throughout this 13-part series explaining my eccentric escapades, you'll notice the line between acting and reality begin to blur, sending you on a mind-boggling journey outshined only by the ayahuasca experience that catalyzed this absurd, artistic endeavor. But in this goodbye video, acting versus reality remained a distinct dichotomy. It was 100% acting, and there was a select group of people who knew this.
It became clear to me that all of this was an act. Connor had no plans of hurting himself or anyone else.
And as an honest critique of myself, this was not my finest acting performance. There was certainly adequate emotion, but zero tears. So over the past 3 years, I worked diligently to elevate my craft to the next level. But I want to point out that I could have easily selected the path of cowardice by professing the goodbye video was a genuine moment of vulnerability and acquire an abundance of sympathy. But I'm choosing to expose the authentically bizarre intricacies of my psychotic mind and articulate the truth to the best of my ability. If you've ever been in psychosis, you'd realize that this is quite the formidable undertaking. It originated with an ayahuasca ceremony in Joshua Tree, California, a ritualistic ingestion of one of the world's most powerful psychedelic substances. Now, I don't have the time or even the verbal acuity to communicate its profundity, but I will expound on the aftermath. This substance induced a hyper-creative type of manic grandiosity that perpetuated even after the substance was completely out of my system. Days worth of continuous insights and apparent epiphanies into an elaborate strategy to propel myself to the summit of my life's purpose. For the first time, I had ineffably clear motivation, inspiration, and direction, attributes that I was severely lacking because, at this time, my fitness influencer career was slowly deteriorating after Derek, from More Plates, More Dates, propagated this theory that I was losing my hair because I was a fake natty, that I was deceiving my audience about the performance-enhancing drugs I was taking for my own personal gain. More on that in future episodes. The point is, this presumption that became so prevalent was quite disadvantageous from a business perspective, and my expenses in Los Angeles started to greatly surpass my income, and it was slowly getting worse. I desperately sought alternative career paths. And at the time, I was working with agent and director Archie Archambault. He was aiding in my venture to become an actor in Hollywood. He helped me acquire auditions, like for the Bachelorette satire series I performed in. He also proposed we create a pilot for an original series that we could pitch to producers, like the Baywatch series that we briefly field tested. Unfortunately, these efforts didn't show much promise relative to my loftier goals, but the grandiose pitch that I presented him in the thralls of manic hyper-creativity put a gleam in his eyes that solidified my commitment to this plan. And together we elaborated the blueprint that would propel us to Hollywood stardom. The play, Dear Connor Murphy. Designed to serve as the expansive YouTube sequel to the Broadway play Dear Evan Hansen, where one of the main characters' names is also Connor Murphy. This 13-part series is an attempt to elucidate a unique, intricate, artistic play that we never intended to clarify explicitly. In fact, the marketing strategy of the play was for other influencers to analyze, interpret, and debate clues we left hidden in the play to maximize its virality to the point where we would draw attention from Hollywood producers. And although a small but devoted section of my audience began to detect my erratic content's underlying intentions and declaring their discovery by commenting they were in on it, the play certainly was not executed flawlessly, and the ensuing unilateral narrative of my antics reflected this. See, during the play, my right brain creative grandiosity overrode my left brain rational practicality, causing me to overlook sensible strategic moves to maximize the chance of the play's success. To put it bluntly, I was crazy, and I made mistakes. And unfortunately, Archie could not mitigate these errors, nor help me create the high production grand finale that we had envisioned, because sadly, he passed away from COVID. So this 13-part series is my best attempt to synthesize a complex, multifaceted rabbit hole into a digestible and compelling conclusion. And it is, of course, dedicated to Archie Archambault. McJuggernuggets.
There's this YouTube channel called McJuggernuggets,
who rose to fame for his Psycho Dad series that was designed to look authentic, but was later revealed to be a dramatic performance, part scripted and part improvisation.
The beauty of the Psycho series was that it was portrayed as real. It's unlike anything in film or television.
He was my inspiration to create a theatrical YouTube series that my audience would perceive as real.
finally have a family that loves me.
Inducing this collective false perception would serve as a reasonably adequate indicator that my acting skills were sufficient for Hollywood. Here were the requirements of the character I sought to create. 1, he must showcase emotion. If you search the movie scenes with the best acting performances on YouTube, every character is either angry, sad, or crazy. 2, his story must exemplify a powerful message that positively impacts the audience. And 3, the character must emulate other characters in popular literature or media, closely enough so parallels can be noticed and constitute as clues that the content is a scripted acting performance rather than a real-life portrayal. The vision was that the audience would gradually detect these parallels, progressively prompting the mind-blowing experience of realizing what they thought to be real was actually an act.
It's all a fucking act! Ah!
Including this. This is also an act. Was that good? Was that good? But when you implement method acting in a state of enhanced neuroplasticity after a profound psychedelic experience, the line between acting and reality is bound to blur, like it has with countless actors in the past who thoroughly immerse themselves in their acting roles. And of course, in a hyper-creative manic state, emulating a single character didn't seem adequately imaginative. So I created a multifaceted super character comprised of 3 sub-characters with their own distinct yet interconnected storylines, which segmented my persona into so many components that my original personality began to dissolve. In this episode, we have time to dissect one of these sub-characters. The other 2 and the connections among them will be elaborated in future episodes. And remember, every piece of content I posted during this time period intentionally related to one or more of these sub-characters and their storylines. The first character I emulated was the fictional character Connor Murphy from Dear Evan Hansen, the Broadway play and now movie. Dear Evan Hansen follows the story of Evan Hansen, a student struggling with social anxiety. Connor Murphy is another student struggling with mental health issues who tragically commits self-deletion.
Connor took his own life.
Connor's parents find a letter opening with Dear Evan Hansen. Evan wrote it to himself as part of his therapy exercise, but they mistake it for Connor's suicide note. In an attempt to help Connor's grieving family and find social connection, Evan fabricates an imaginary past friendship between himself and Connor. I chose this character because 1, his name is the same as mine. 2, the character's unstable personality would provide the opportunity to sufficiently demonstrate my acting capability. And 3, because the play Dear Evan Hansen would supply a foundational storyline that could be expanded upon to spread a powerful message when combined with my original internet persona. And before I articulate that core message, here are the parallels to the fictional Dear Evan Hansen character, Connor Murphy, that I integrated into my content. Starting with, of course, the inclination for self-deletion. Dear Evan Hansen's Connor Murphy committed self-deletion.
Connor, he took his own life.
And it was blamed on his dysfunctional family, which is analogous to YouTube's Connor Murphy.
He was saying goodbye. He's talking about mental health, the struggles that he had with his parents.
Both Connor Murphys also apparently suffered from bipolar disorder.
So the first psychiatric illness that I have is bipolar. Is life even worth living anymore?
When they're diagnosed with bipolar disorder is that they're going to be on medication for the rest of their lives.
They were also apparently addicted to drugs.
Meaning that he is on one of the, if not the single most powerful, intense psychedelic drug every single day, consuming it every 2 hours.
If I stop smoking drugs, then everything might be alright.
And were both apparently bisexual.
Nikolai is going to give me his his divine protein shake. Yes.
And each Connor Murphy play included a fundraiser in Connor's name.
And that's why I'm pulling this giant stunt to help promote gay rights and spread mental health awareness. I'm doing this fundraiser, but I was lucky enough to find 2 new parents.
And of course, musical renditions.
Hashtag mental health awareness. Hashtag please donate now.
I love my parents, but each day's another fight.
Now, Dear Evan Hansen is renowned for its positive themes of mental health awareness, so accordingly, Dear Connor Murphy was intended to represent similar ideas through the tragic hero story archetype. See, Connor Murphy, the YouTube persona, was considered a hero by many. He inspired countless young men to go to the gym and improve their physiques. But unfortunately, this persona reinforced the naive idea that superficial pursuits that facilitate the acquisition of external validation, especially from women, will generate some sort of lasting fulfillment or happiness. It won't. I achieved everything I could have dreamed of, a godlike aesthetic physique, an abundance of women, and substantial financial success. But during what others would consider my prime, I was no happier than the insecure, socially anxious high schooler who was brutally bullied and couldn't get a girlfriend. So Dear Connor Murphy was designed to recapitulate the common condition of the celebrity or successful CEO who becomes addicted to drugs or even commits self-deletion despite exemplifying Western society's definition of success. It was meant to showcase a tragic downfall that communicates the reality that the Western view of success doesn't equate to happiness, even if you do get 3 girls a day.
I fuck 3 fucking girls a day. 3 girls a day.
That was acting, by the way. See, Dear Connor Murphy aimed to encourage individuals to question the limitations of their hedonistic pursuits.
You are looking for happiness.
in places where happiness cannot be found,
and compel them to seek happiness elsewhere through deep personal development work and a connection with some universal force that supersedes their own ego. See, as religion has declined in the West, people are left starving for meaning and direction. Social media has amplified insecurities through exposing individuals to unnatural magnitudes of judgment that our biology just wasn't equipped to handle. And then overstimulation tempts us to escape these problems through hedonism. Dear Connor Murphy was meant to shine a light on these pressing social issues and present potential solutions that few contemporary role models are purporting. In episode 3, you'll see that faking my death was also part of my second sub-character, the Eastern adaptation of Jesus, a character that was intended to provide atheists, agnostics, scientists, and hyper-rational individuals a more sensible recontextualization of mystical religious stories, in the hopes of instilling them with the meaning that is absent in so many of us. And in the next episode, you'll surely cringe at the application of one of Dear Evan Hansen's major themes, the struggle with social anxiety, the happiness-impeding mental affliction that every one of us struggles with to an extent. And there's no better way to destroy your ego and rid yourself of the fear of others' judgment than by absolutely humiliating yourself in front of 2 million subscribers. Or so I thought. See if my ego was completely dissolved. If I had my mental health completely figured out, if I wasn't still in psychosis, then I wouldn't be participating in this therapy exercise where I write video letters to myself. Don't confuse them for something that they're not, like Connor Murphy's parents did. Sincerely, me.
Sincerely me.
Okay. I'm just gonna tell you how I really feel about Derek. I've decided today you're not gonna get some scrupulously scripted, elaborately edited video. No. Just for Derek, this one is gonna be all natural. I'm not gonna pretend to be the bigger person or just forgive Derek for what he's done in some sort of sanctimonious act of enlightenment. No. I'm going to dominate Derek raw with my uncut content, although I will attempt to abstain from exclaiming expletives because I need the ad revenue. See, right now, I'm sitting in a $200 per month, 200 square foot condo in Pattaya, Thailand. Derek forced me to escape from the United States because he destroyed the life I had there. Obviously, I'm a little mentally unstable, I get it, but don't be a sociopath like Derek and have some goddamn empathy, because if you were in my position, you wouldn't be a Buddha either. I want you to imagine some pretentious fitness influencer flippantly fabricated a false narrative that ruined your reputation in the industry that provides you your livelihood for the utterly selfish reason of harvesting internet views. I might be crazy. I'm definitely crazy. But before you constitute a claim to over 1 million people that has the potential to propel a person into poverty, maybe it should have just a sliver of non-speculative evidence attached to it. Guys, can you really blame me for having a psychotic break? I'm just a human who was non-consensually born into this dystopian society where I have to accumulate some imaginary resource we call money to bribe other humans to fork over the necessities to subdue my suffering. What do you do when that resource acquisition system is demolished and you have no idea how to create another one? Of course, I participated in a psychedelic ceremony. I needed some insight, some direction, some hope. You know, I thought my purpose in life was to motivate young men to get in shape. Derek stole that purpose from me and extinguished the source of meaning, the only source of meaning that I derived from this trivial existence. He had the audacity to cause my psychotic episode and then ridicule me for it. He made me want to say goodbye. So this is my final example of the most disadvantageous perspective I could possibly adopt. See, in the Western world, individuals have become afflicted with the pernicious mind virus of victim mentality. But this virus is nothing more than a malevolent modifier of perspective. Viewing your circumstance as either Satan's sadism or God's grace is equally valid. But one of these perspectives is clearly more advantageous. Finding the positive in the destruction of your career isn't easy, but I found a way. To make my life more breezy, I turned it into a play.
Dear Connor Murphy, you're known for your meteoric rise to fitness influencer stardom, followed by your tragic downfall into clinical insanity. And it's time to expose the darkest inner workings of a mind that was, and still is, in psychosis.
Previously on Dear Connor Murphy.
It originated with an ayahuasca ceremony, one of the world's most powerful psychedelic substances. This substance induced a hyper-creative type of manic grandiosity, and at the time I was working with agent and director Archie Archambault, and together we elaborated the blueprint that would propel us to Hollywood stardom. The play, Dear Connor Murphy. One of the 3 sub-characters that comprised my super character was a prophet persona. Derek, from More Plates, More Dates, crucified me for being a fake natty. So before I delineate the details of Derek's claims and their validity, I want to reveal the recontextualization of this tribulation that depicts it as a blessing, a propitious perspective that commensurately contrasts with my preceding resentful rant. Derek was my unconscious savior. He helped me expediently escape the cult of bodybuilding. It's a cult I'm grateful to have been a part of, but it's a cult I may still be trapped in if it weren't for Derek dismantling my bodybuilding-based identity. In my video, Escaping the Cult of Bodybuilding, I explained how bodybuilding is the most widespread, harmful cult that remains relatively covert by masquerading as a self-improvement community. Like most cults, bodybuilding preys on individuals with deep insecurities. It attracts individuals who are depressed, socially anxious, or otherwise unsatisfied with life, particularly their romantic life, just like my former teenage self was. But instead of healing insecurities at their core, bodybuilding hides them beneath a veneer of superficial, contrived confidence. It doesn't fix the core issue of their fear of the judgment of others and addiction to others' approval. It is extremely evident that muscle mass doesn't dissolve insecurity. In most cases, insecurity simply manifests in dangerous ways, such as body dysmorphia. See, if the root insecurities aren't abolished, no amount of muscle is sufficient. This severe body dysmorphia that causes serious bodybuilders to abuse illegal drugs and knowingly shed decades off of their life just to achieve a specific aesthetic is the most dangerous, overlooked mental disorder.
That's a lot of what bodybuilding is, drug abuse as a result of insecurity.
Eating disorders. Only the most honest, self-aware individuals will talk about them. But the common symptoms of eating disorders cannot be distinguished from the common bodybuilding dieting protocols. Bodybuilding is also intrinsically gay, to a degree. It requires a necessary obsession for the male physique, which isn't inherently negative. But bodybuilders with any inkling of homophobia are bound to experience psychological dysregulation, because consciously or subconsciously, the homophobic part of their psyche cannot approve of worshiping a group of naked muscular men on an altar. This dysfunctional phenomenon will be fully investigated in the next episode as I explain the symbolism of ingesting the divine protein shake. And while I'm not assuming the following bodybuilders were homophobic, it's evident they did possess underlying insecurities that their bodybuilding endeavors failed to alleviate. Callum Von Moger, former Mr. Universe, the archetype of a successful bodybuilder, attempted to unalive himself. Luke Sandow also committed self-deletion, and because of the stigma surrounding mental health, his family said it was just heart failure. Yes, his heart might have failed, but it was not an accident.
What happened with Luke was a choice. It was his choice. We'll never comprehend quite what he was struggling with.
And of course, Ziz, the legend himself, the prophet of the aesthetic bodybuilding religion. Ziz was not only an integral inspiration of my original fitness content, but he was the main motivator of my YouTube play, Dear Connor Murphy, the foundation of all my eccentric content, where I method acted a super character comprised of 3 sub-characters. Because Ziz was an act.
It's a fucking act. There is no Ziz.
Underneath the confident, charismatic YouTube persona Ziz was Aziz Shavershin, an insecure kid who never found the genuine confidence he was seeking through his aesthetic bodybuilding endeavors.
Before his fame and even after his fame, he was very, very insecure, and he was in a lot of pain and a lot of hurt because deep down, he's still that skinny kid.
And unfortunately, this led to his death. Ziz passed away here in Pattaya, Thailand, in a sauna. Whether I now live here by pure coincidence or whether this is a method acting strategy in my play, well, that's for you to know and for me to find out. But be careful what you assume. Most people assume Ziz's death was primarily due to his anabolic steroid abuse. Maybe that did play a role. But while living in Los Angeles, California, I worked out with a close family friend of his, and he provided me insight, revealing that there's more to the story. It was evident Ziz was in a dark place, and what was never disclosed by his family until I made a video on this was that he had just suffered from a botched nose job.
The nose job is true.
And anabolic substances weren't the only substances he was taking. Ziz's family said his death was caused by a heart condition. Is this true? Or did his family use a similar optic strategy as Luke Sandow's family to cultivate what they believed was the optimal public perception? His brother, Chestra, hates me for elucidating this possibility.
Fucking good old mate Connor Murphy.
Yeah, Connor.
Motherfucker, that
I
guy.
did it.
I hate that guy.
Why?
Bro, you fucking made a video saying that how Ziz really died.
And I'm still ambivalent to the morality of putting forth this alternative scenario. On the one hand, I'm opposing the family's desires. On the other hand, the revelation that this aesthetic bodybuilding icon's death was predicated more on his mental state than his physical state would send such a more powerful message to the bodybuilding community that exemplifies the importance of dissolving root insecurities rather than simply masking them. Because an advisory to the bodybuilding community against anabolic drug abuse may prevent some unintentional deaths, but a warning about the unfulfilling nature of superficial pursuits will help prevent not only the unintentional deaths, but the intentional deaths as well. During my ceremonial ayahuasca experience, of course, Ziz did appear, not as an external entity, but as an archetypical spirit that wasn't separate from me. So, as an oblation to the spirit of Ziz, I initiated my play, and then recreated a methodology to help bodybuilders escape from their cult, and prevent both the physical and mental imbalances that are so prevalent within it. And all it took to formulate it was 1 month of living with a mad scientist in Pattaya, Thailand, after the death of Derek's friend left a vacant room to be filled. January 20th, 2023. After 26 hours of fasting and meditation at altitude, my flight landed in Bangkok, Thailand. My mind was primed to soak in a novel culture whose contrast with America imbued me with innumerable insights into the West's discordancy, which I'll expand upon in episode 10. I met friends who escaped America to evade the perceived hostility towards men. I met friends who abandoned America to bask in the abundance of humans that appear to be women. And I met friends who fled America for more grave matters.
I plead the fifth.
Dr. Connor Murphy met Dr. Tony Huge, and the most riveting tapestry of affairs serendipitously unfolded. Tony guided me on a tour of Pattaya, Thailand, unveiling the alien civilization where Ziz spent his final days, revealing the exotic amenities that may or may not have prompted his overseas expedition, including ubiquitously distributed over-the-counter anabolic steroids, and of course, an unlimited supply of ladyboys. As Tony led me on a quest to acquire a ladyboy girlfriend.
I'm saying we need to get you a ladyboy girlfriend.
A ladyboy girlfriend? The YouTube biohacker Leo in Longevity, who was living in Tony Huge's house, died under quite mysterious circumstances. And although I never talked to Leo in person, I felt connected with him. He analyzed my psychotic episode in a YouTube video, and was the leading expert in our shared endeavor of penis enlargement, the only transformation of mine that his friend Derek considered legitimate.
It will grow!
It's very possible. Like, there are guys who have dedicated a ton of time to it and have gotten upwards of 2 to 3 inches in gain.
And now there was a void, not only in the fitness community, but in the heart of Tony Huge, that was imploring to be filled. And I was chosen to carry on Leo's legacy. As I resided in Leo's old room in the hopes of embodying his spirit, Tony and I brainstormed the persona of my newest YouTube character. The chaotic clash of various moral and practical perspectives gradually harmonized into a synchronized strategy. Tony suggested we enlighten Derek with the reality of the physique I could sculpt with the compounds he claimed I used to take. But I desired to build my peak physique naturally, by the standard of the bodybuilding consensus, and perform scrupulous blood tests to prove it. Then, due to precarious circumstances that arose, it was incumbent on us to leave the country. And after an odyssey around Asia, immersing ourselves into novel experiences that enhanced our neuroplasticity, we stumbled across the middle way. I would fill the biohacking void that Leo left, but I would promote the balanced supplementation regimen and its complementary philosophy that the bodybuilding world is severely lacking. I would incarnate as the synergistic synthesis of the spirit of Leo and Ziz in the city from which they both departed, and thus the Natty Plus protocol was born. The Natty Plus protocol isn't simply a supplementation system, but it's a philosophical tool that disassembles a destructive bodybuilding religion. My profound psychedelic experience provided me an insight into the inherent limitations and potential pitfalls of the reductive fitness ideology of natural versus not. In the fitness community, you're forced to adopt one of two identity labels: natural, if you only take natural substances, or unnatural, if you only take unnatural substances. And a quick YouTube search will reveal the collective obsession over who's natty, who's not, and who's obfuscating their true identity from their audience. But the inconspicuous issue is that this dichotomous model of naturalness is incomprehensive and rife with contradictions.
What distinguishes a natural supplement from an unnatural supplement?
It is a very hard question. I'm not really sure how to answer that question.
See, for a true dichotomy to exist, you'd have to provide me with a consistent condition that distinguishes a natural from an unnatural compound. But that condition can absolutely not be found without contradictions arising. For example, enclomiphene is a selective estrogen receptor modulator. It enhances your natural testosterone production, and most bodybuilders would consider it unnatural. But testosterone-boosting herbs are ubiquitously considered natural. So what's the condition that distinguishes these two? Bodybuilders would say it's either its potency or its quality of being synthetic. But low potency isn't a consistent indicator of naturalness, or microdoses of anabolic steroids like trenbolone would be considered natural. And being synthetic isn't a consistent indicator of unnaturalness, because creatine monohydrate, arguably the most commonly used natural supplement, is absolutely synthetic. It's generally conflated with the natural creatine found in red meat, but it's not. It's a vegan compound synthesized in a lab via the chemical reaction of sarcosine and cyanamide. It didn't even exist before 1950. And you could argue that it mimics natural creatine, so that's why it should be considered natural. But to stay consistent, you'd have to classify synthetic testosterone natural as well, since it mimics a natural biological compound. And then you could probably contend that testosterone is different. It's an anabolic hormone. But vitamin D is also an anabolic hormone, so structurally similar to testosterone that some scientists consider vitamin D metabolites a subclass of anabolic steroids. So, are you unnatural if you take vitamin D? Well, you could blindly adopt the World Anti-Doping Agency's demarcation, but then you'd be unnatural if you currently consume cannabis, and not a lifetime natural if you drank too much coffee before 2004. See, when the dichotomous model is subjected to enough scrutiny, its deficiencies are discovered. And although being on the spectrum may have been a requisite for this discovery, a spectrum model of naturalness is undoubtedly more congruent to reality.
Connor Murphy points out there is no natural or not natural. Technically, it's all on a spectrum, and he's kinda right.
Now, is this quest to normalize the spectrum model of naturalness pedantic, purely semantics, an attempt to rationalize my unnaturalness, an attempt to maintain my natty card, or a genuine venture to positively modulate the bodybuilding ethos? Well, that's for you to know and for me to find out. But the dichotomous model of naturalness and its intrinsic identity labels does have tangible detrimental effects in the bodybuilding world. Primarily, the dichotomous identity model of natural versus unnatural promotes an all-or-nothing mentality that leads to drug abuse. Because we've collectively cultivated a social value derived from the maintenance of the natty card, if someone becomes unsatisfied and commits to becoming unnatural, the tendency is to compensate for the value lost from foregoing their natty card by abusing drugs. Because the biggest fear of an enhanced athlete is having to identify as unnatty, but then still looking natty. And while the dysfunctional behaviors on the unnatural end of the spectrum are overt, the dysfunction on the natural end of the spectrum is present as well. It simply evades recognition. On the natural side of the dichotomy, you'll find the endorsement of the naturalistic fallacy, making an inference about what ought to be based solely on what is natural. And those who remain beguiled by this fallacy will be at an increasing disadvantage as technological innovations such as gene therapy will offer unnatural opportunities that are progressively more health conscious. Those attached to their natural identity label will sacrifice their health and well-being just to maintain their natty card. Some type 1 diabetics already refuse to take insulin because they perceive it as unnatural. This is a prevalent enough issue that doctors are provided specific response prompts to change their patients' perspectives. The fitness influencer Alex Eubank, who claims natural, was castigated for taking BPC 157. It's a beneficial healing peptide with minimal side effects and anabolic properties. But of course, fitness influencers seize the opportunity to make sensationalist content criticizing him for no longer being natural, since BPC 157 is prohibited by WADA.
And so exactly, Alex Eubank is not natty.
See, the natty or not mentality incentivizes people to use substances in ways that affirm their identity, rather than implementing a supplementation protocol that maximizes their health and well-being. On the natural end of the spectrum, I refer to these individuals as noble natties, someone who mistakes naturalness as a virtue. I use this term endearingly, for I used to be a noble natty. But this attachment led me to engage in obsessive-compulsive bodybuilding behaviors that negatively affected my physical and mental health. To develop my aspirational physique, I had to meticulously count calories, sacrifice my social life, and even participated in a ritualistic vanity show where I had to castrate myself, inducing female levels of testosterone just to achieve the level of body fat that was expected of me. Serious natural bodybuilding is nowhere in the vicinity of healthy or natural. And as soon as I internalized this philosophy and cured my addiction to others' approval, Developing a holistic supplementation protocol was relatively straightforward. I sought to maximize the enhancement of my physique with negligible, observable side effects. So here's how I do it. The mindset is the paramount principle here. I refuse to sacrifice other elements of my holistic well-being for anatomical vanity. Then I experiment. While doing this, it's important to refrain from thinking in black and white and categorizing a compound as either unhealthy or healthy. Water can be fatal in high enough quantities, and trenbolone can be innocuous at low enough quantities. Specific combinations of compounds can either be healthy or unhealthy, while those same compounds taken in isolation are the opposite. So my goal is to find effective combinations of compounds that can be utilized at particular dosages and cycle durations that elicit negligible, observable side effects from both a subjective sensory standpoint and an objective blood marker standpoint. I'll reveal these specific supplements I have utilized near the end of this video. But now I can tell you that I've been quite successful in my endeavor to enhance my physique while eliciting negligible, observable side effects. And this was enabled by forgoing my attachment to these fabricated bodybuilding labels and discovering the point on the spectrum of naturalness that optimized my holistic well-being. Imagine if the bodybuilding community adopted this approach. Of course, drug abuse would drastically decline. But the possibility of the Natty Plus protocol that imbues me with zeal is its philosophical foundation that can be inquired into with limitless profundity. It can initiate an expedition to the summit of Mount Olympus. It can lead you to God. What even is God, really? Well, just as the cult of bodybuilding blindly accepts a limited dichotomous model of naturalness, religious ideologues uncritically adopt the restricted, dualistic conceptualization of God they were inculcated with. And of course, all of these incomprehensive models are intrinsically rife with contradictions. God is said to be infinite, omnipotent, and omnipresent, yet God is anthropomorphized. In the Western world, it's attributed finite human characteristics. And then individuals who don't subscribe to this specific anthropomorphic conceptualization are alienated from their respective religious cult. Anthropomorphizing God is the divine equivalent of objectifying a human. It undermines the entity's significance. Our Christian underpinnings have instilled the Western world with a juvenile notion of what God is. In contrast, the Eastern world depicts God in a less limited way. In Hindu philosophy, elements of God's nature are anthropomorphized, but not God itself. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are embodiments of the Brahman that are depicted as mystical humans. But of course, the Brahman itself, the infinite, formless, indelible source of creation, isn't anthropomorphized because the human nature is a limited one, incongruent with a boundless ethereal entity. Just as a green camera lens limits your videos to being only green, attributing any characteristic to God conceptually limits its potential, making it not God. But hold on, Connor, you did just attribute characteristics to God. You said it was infinite and formless and whatnot. Good work. That is absolutely a contradiction. Paradoxically, depicting God as infinite is limiting because it implies that it can't be finite. If God doesn't have the ability to be finite, then that makes us more powerful than God in a specific way. So how do we solve this paradox? Well, the concept of infinity itself is inherently paradoxical, because infinity must contain finitude, or it wouldn't be infinity, would it? So accordingly, an all-encompassing God must indeed be a paradoxical one. And this is only an issue if you make logic your God. But the system of logic is inherently limited. Gödel's incompleteness theorem demonstrates the limitations of logic through self-referentiality. This paradoxical logical proposition illustrates that truth must exist beyond what is logically provable. So to truly recognize the nature of the ultimate reality, known by many different names, Brahman, Buddha nature, Tao, Allah, God, we must embrace a philosophy that's not averse to paradox. Our most propitious tool lies in the philosophy of non-duality. It's a philosophy that emphasizes the absence of fundamental duality or separation in existence. But limiting it to just a philosophy is analogous to limiting God by anthropomorphizing it. Non-duality prioritizes direct experience to bypass the limitations of conceptual thinking through practices such as meditation and self-inquiry. But the conceptual foundation is equally paramount, because the distinction between concept and direct experience is one of the innumerable dualities that non-duality deconstructs. To understand the nature of dualities, we can examine the yin and the yang. The yin and the yang symbolizes the inherent connection between opposites. Notice how the white is dependent on the black, and how the white contains a small amount of black and vice versa. It exemplifies how the concept of separation is an illusion, and signifies the interconnectedness of all things. This interdependence of all phenomena is known as dependent origination in Buddhism, and illustrated through Indra's net. No aspect of reality can exist without its opposite, and when probed deeply enough, it can be recognized that every element of reality and its complementary opposite are one entity, only perceived to be separate by the conceptual human mind. Every duality can be deconstructed. The yin and yang demonstrates how black cannot exist without white. The reality is, there exists a unified spectrum of gray. The judgment of bad provides context that is inherent to the judgment of good. Every good experience in life is dependent on its relativity to the respective negative alternatives. In this play, the duality of acting versus real life has been thoroughly deconstructed. And one of the most transformative dualities to deconstruct is the duality of self and other. Notice how your sense of self is dependent on the concept of other, and how your apparently separate personality is dependent on comparing and contrasting your beliefs and behaviors with those of others. And of course, the duality of God versus human can also be deconstructed. If there's nothing other than God, what else could you possibly be? Of course, God is infinite, but infinite divinity can only exist in a relationship of relativity to the finite mundanity. The process of recognizing the non-dual nature of reality supposedly leads to a visceral change in your identity. You die before your body dies as your identity shifts from the ego, the psychological programming responsible for distinction, to the fundamental field of awareness that unifies all elements of reality. In Eastern traditions, this ground of being is said to be ever-present yet obscured by typical psychological processes. From a scientific perspective, this is what emerges when the default mode network is powered down. See, in the metaphorical sense, this process is nothing more than the eradication of Satan, which is the dualistic thinking that is responsible for our sense of separation from God, that was instilled within us after Eve ate the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And as my second sub-character in my grandiose YouTube play, Dear Connor Murphy, I attempted to dispel Satan from the bodybuilding world by planting a seed of non-duality in the fallen garden of bodybuilding by deconstructing the duality of natural versus not. The black and white dualistic thinking in the bodybuilding world and the dysfunction it precipitates epitomizes satanic shenanigans. So what better location to commence a spiritual war than Sin City? I had something so important to get off my chest, it warranted a flight to Las Vegas to reveal it publicly on YouTube with Kenny K.O.
Kenny, I have something I have to confess to you.
Kenny is a black sheep in a particular regard. He was the only YouTuber I knew who posited I was natural.
I would say Connor Murphy, he claims natural, he's only 22.4. I would say he is natural, he gets my approval.
But this was before my physique deteriorated. Kenny was now skeptical after the star of this video, Derek, from More Plates, More Dates, purported the theory that would be adopted as the prevailing consensus by the YouTube community. That I took anabolic steroids to build my prime physique, and then discontinued them because I was losing my hair, causing my physique to deteriorate.
But then he can't go back on cycle to get it back because he knows if he goes back on cycle, he's just gonna his hair even worse.
The evidence was purely speculative, so its widespread acceptance must imply it was at least a substantive speculation. Well, not exactly. One of the first videos I ever created was a 10-minute transformation, where I showcased how differently a physique can look under different circumstances. These videos were literally taken 10 minutes apart. The reality is that the decline of my physique was one giant illusion. See, I can take photos from the same time periods that Derek exhibited to show the opposite transformation. There was no significant decline in my physique from 2016 to 2018. So in his theory, Derek was either being disingenuous, or he saw something that wasn't there, a mild psychosis that appears to be contagious. It manifested homologously in Greg Doucette and Kenny Ko, who both claimed Jeff's side discontinued anabolic steroids as well because his physique recently receded, even though his hairline did not. But again, I can find images of Jeff that depict the reverse transformation during the same time period. But it's entirely possible that the images and videos I selected to illustrate my and Jeff's side's transformation were even more misleading. Maybe I'm not seeing something that's right in front of me. After all, I express very clearly in the intro of this video that I am still in psychosis. But even if our hypotheses are grounded in a fantasy, it doesn't make their core claim right or wrong. Was I a fake natty, a bodybuilder who was deceptive about his performance-enhancing drug utilization? Well, this is precisely the topic of conversation in Sin City. After a pre-Masadi carousal, I revealed to Kenny 3 gray area supplements that I took that could potentially be considered unnatural.
MK677. You took a SARM. It's not a SARM. All right, growth hormone secretagogue. For 2 weeks, I took Ostarine.
Okay, another SARM.
That's a SARM. Finasteride. That is a compound that blocks DHT.
In our conversation, I elaborated how contradictions arise when attempting to classify any of these substances as natural or unnatural, corroborating the spectrum model of naturalness.
Would you consider that natural or not?
Ooh, tough question, actually.
This perspective had freshly emanated from a manically grandiose psyche, so it was relatively underdeveloped, and took 3 years to culminate into this manifesto. A deconstruction of a dualistic bodybuilding religion that crucified me, at least according to my second subcharacter that I'm method acting. But a crucifixion can't be bad to the real or theatrical character that incarnated here for that purpose. See, emulating my second subcharacter imbued me with the recontextualization of Derek's accusations as a necessary scene of the one divine cosmic play. And in that play, I'll always be a sinner. But did I sin when I refrained from disclosing my implementation of those 3 gray area substances to my audience? Well, I never claimed to be natural after implementing them, but I did intentionally abstain from discussing it. And well, on the one hand, transparency seems to be honorable. The truth is generally perceived as valuable, after all, and honest PED disclosure may promote realistic body expectations. On the other hand, this transparency has normalized the glorification of PEDs, which is a viral social media strategy mistaken as a virtue. See, when Derek accused me of being on steroids to 2.7 million people, a portion of them, of course, took the type of dangerous anabolic compounds Derek suggested I was taking in the hopes of acquiring the physique that I had. And I now had the opportunity to reveal the safer alternatives that I was actually taking, lessening the chance of drug abuse in those individuals. So Derek's accusations provided the ethical certainty that allowed for this disclosure, and the continuous disclosure of my Natty Plus protocol experiments. The experiments highest on the Natty or Not spectrum involved these supplements MK677, AC262, and enclomiphene. I'll let you consider the morality of my initial withholding of information, but keep in mind the spectrum model of naturalness, and enjoy the puzzle of deciphering precisely which compounds warrant disclosure. But Derek didn't accept my admission. He doubled down on his conjecture and claimed I omitted the most potent compounds I was taking. So I devised a psychotic plan to convince him to retract his claims. I asked him to send me turkesterone from his supplement company.
I will send you a full fucking cycle of turkesterone. It'll move the needle more in an aspect that is non-hormonal.
It's essentially insect testosterone, but it's considered natural by the bodybuilding consensus. I recommenced my original shirtless fitness content and rebuilt the physique I had emaciated during my 40-day fast that I discussed in episode 3. My new physique rivaled my prime, But Derek, unfortunately, did not seize the opportunity to capitalize on my free promotion and acquiesce that my physique could be achieved naturally simply by utilizing his testosterone. Maybe this would have unfolded differently if it weren't for the controversy that erupted about his testosterone potentially being fake. And I still question whether the Natty Plus protocol was subconsciously created just as another attempt to convince Derek that I'm being honest about my PED utilization. In 2023, I underwent 7 blood tests, which transparently entailed my hormonal profile, free to be scrutinized by the fitness community. And although I tell myself the primary purpose of the lab work was for the Natty Plus protocol content, maybe a subconscious and self-conscious facet of my psyche just wanted to prove Derek wrong by maintaining my best physique of all time while maintaining my natural hormonal production, a feat that's not possible within Derek's fantasy. Because if I'm honest with myself, although I've progressively recontextualized the debacle as positive, retrospectively, residual resentment remained during the peak of my psychosis. My most sensationalist videos were strategically designed as fodder for Derek. As he posted a panoply of videos presenting my psychotic shenanigans with the utmost seriousness, I laughed maniacally, eagerly awaiting the day my audience would discover that everything was just a play. Derek would look like a fool, and his fake natty narrative would be vulnerable to reconsideration by my followers. But Derek wasn't the fool. I was. A grandiose fool, of course, and a fool that was lacking gratitude. I was a fool for thinking I could make people believe something they didn't want to, and a fool for having any resentment towards someone who initiated the most miraculous, supernatural adventure I could ever imagine. How could it be rational to have any resentment towards my savior from the cult of bodybuilding? My guide to God. I hope you will accept this apology video, Derek. And thank you for everything. Sincerely,